Is it time for the Mueller investigation to face an investigation of its own? President Trump's defense lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, says Mueller should be probed to see if he helped destroy evidence after thousands of text messages between Peter Strzok and his FBI paramour Lisa Page went missing. The Department of Justice claims the politically explosive texts went missing due to a technical glitch. Glitchy. Francie Hakes is a former federal prosecutor and former DOJ National Coordinator for Child Exploitation and Prevention, and she joins us. Francie, there's a kind of credibility issue here, because everybody in some little rinky-dink civil suit in the local county court knows that you don't do this kind of stuff. How come the FBI gets away with just vaporizing important evidence from key figures?
Well, that's a great question, Mark. I don't know how they get away with it. And the thing that concerns me the most is that you're talking about text messages that show bias. And as I'm sure you know, every criminal defendant in the courts across this country are entitled to any evidence that shows bias by a witness. And Strzok, certainly, who would have been a witness in this case, in many cases, showed clear bias in his text messages with his lover, Page. It was wrong for the Department of Justice to get rid of these text messages. They were the subject of an OIG investigation already, and it seems to me to be a constitutional violation that they cannot provide these text messages to any current or future defendants.
Well, Peter Strzok is this very weird figure, because there's like 35,000 FBI employees, but somehow this guy is the indispensable guy. He's on the Hillary investigation, he's on the Trump investigation, he gets sent to the White House to stitch up Michael Flynn, he gets flown to London to see Alexander Downer, the Australian High Commissioner, so they can get the goods on Papadopoulos, and then he's sent to the special counsel's office. And according to the OIG's report, it's the special counsel's office that reviewed these cell phones and put them back on factory settings. Isn't that corruption in the special counsel's office?
Well, it certainly seems like it could be, Mark. My concern here is that Bob Mueller was a United States attorney, a presidential appointee. He was the FBI director. He knows better than most people what is relevant to a potential prosecution. And what is relevant is always exculpatory information. Right. And that is what is contained in these text messages. And it is shocking that they deleted them, and it makes you wonder whether it was purposeful.
Yeah, and that phrase you use, exculpatory information, that's actually, prosecutors can be punished for that. Now, nobody seems anxious to punish Bob Mueller, so maybe Giuliani has a point about investigating the investigator. Another thing, Francie, while we have you, a new report claims that President Trump's former attorney, Michael Cohen, who famously said he had never been to Prague, may have been there in the summer of 2016, according to cell phone tower evidence. And that, as you know, was one of the most explosive allegations in the various Trump details in the Trump dossier. Is this anything real, or is it hearsay upon hearsay?
Well, I think, Mark, you hit upon it. I think it is hearsay upon hearsay. It reminds me of the very Steele dossier that was the source of this information in the first place, that has been unverified. It is still unverified to this day, and relies upon mysterious Russian or Eastern European intelligence sources, the same thing that the FBI and the Department of Justice asked the FISA court to rely upon in the Carter Page FISA warrant. It is not reliable information, and until you show me American surveillance by Americans that prove he was in Prague, I'm not going to believe it.
So you don't see why this MI6 guy, Christopher Steele, a British subject, should be allowed to interfere in the 2016 American election, basically?
I really don't. I think we should leave that to Americans.
Okay, and presumably he wouldn't actually, if Cohen had been in Prague. He's now copped a plea with Mueller and the rest of the guys. He would presumably have no incentive not to disclose that. So if he had been there, the investigation would know it, wouldn't they?
Well, they would. And in fact, he has made no secret of his newfound hatred for President Trump and his evil ways, as I think he put it. And so I think if he was in Prague and it was part of some vast conspiracy by the president to collude with Russia to throw the election, I think he'd be on Twitter talking about it right now.
Yeah, he does seem to be relatively leaky about that. Are we anywhere near a wrap-up of this investigation?
Well, of course, rumors say that Mueller will put out a report in February. It's long overdue, in my opinion. This investigation has been going on now for well over 2 years. I can't imagine what it is they're doing now. I look forward to seeing the report. But I think at this point he's just justifying the millions of dollars that he's been spending. Okay,
well, he's been spending millions of dollars resetting iPhones to factory settings. It looks like they've been doing a bit of that anyway. Francie, thank you for explaining all that to us.
All right, it's day 595 of the Mueller witch hunt, and the Hill's John Solomon out with a huge bombshell report tonight, exculpatory Russia evidence about Michael Flynn that the U.S. intel kept secret. Now, John Solomon reporting on Rudy Giuliani's call for Mueller to be investigated over obstruction of justice. The president's attorney, former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani, joins us for our Hannity Deep State Watch tonight. Mr. Mayor, how are you?
Welcome back.
I wish I had that ring, by the way, which is the Yankee championship ring that you have and deserve. All right, so let me start with this first report, which is Mueller should be investigated for the destruction of evidence. Ken Starr agrees with you as well, and that is the erased text messages of the lead investigators at the start of this investigation.
Well, this would be a massive scandal if it happened to us, if we were producing documents for them and we said, oh, we have 19,000 texts right at a relevant period that...
the relevant period?
Yeah, that we had erased. It was erased by Mueller, by the way. It was erased by Mueller's record officer, who claims that he or she looked at them and they don't contain anything pertinent. Now, how can that be? Strzok and Page were texting every day about how much they hated Trump, how much they wanted to get him out, how much they wanted to stop him, how they had an insurance policy to get him out. All of a sudden, they went to work for Mueller and they stopped texting back and forth. It makes no sense. What makes sense to me is there are some highly damaging texts about the way this investigation began as a completely illegitimate attempt to destroy Donald Trump. This is an investigation in search of a crime, and they haven't found one yet. Collusion's not a crime. It's not a crime.
Firing Comey's not a crime.
Firing Comey's not a crime. The campaign contributions are not criminal. They're not even a violation of the campaign finance law. They're paying off a possible civil judgment. This is make up a crime, make up a crime, make up a crime, hoping to find one eventually.
Then they get everybody on process.
And then they frame certain people. Look what they did to Flynn. What they did to Flynn is outrageous. He told them something. They had the paper in their drawer.
No. Well, by the paper, you mean the transcript.
The transcript.
They surveilled him. They amassed him. They leaked raw intelligence.
If they were searching for the truth, they'd have put that in front of him and said, General, does this refresh your recollection? I know this game. I used to play it a lot more ethically than they do.
But it's even worse than that, because you had the deputy FBI director, McCabe, say, oh, you don't need a lawyer. And then you had the FBI director said, oh, well, it's 4 days into the Trump administration. We're not going to follow the normal process and go through the White House counsel.
Yeah, we think we can get away with it because they're not experienced enough.
Wow.
Get away with what?
4 days.
Get away with unethical behavior, possibly illegal behavior, totally reprehensible behavior on the part of a prosecutor. If General Flynn was sympathetic to the liberal media, they'd be outraged about this. They'd be demanding that his case be dismissed just to teach the prosecutor a lesson.
Will Hillary ever get in trouble for the violations of the Espionage Act? Will she ever get in trouble for the obstruction of justice by destroying subpoenaed emails? Will the FISA, we know now that the top officials in the FBI and DOJ lied and presented unverified information to FISA court judges to obtain a warrant on a Trump campaign assistant.
Those 4 affidavits are false. They're false affidavits.
What would happen if I did that?
You'd be under investigation, possibly indicted by now.
Would you, if you're my lawyer, could you get me off?
I don't think so. Not unless there was an explanation I didn't know about. But the reality is it has to be investigated, and it's not being investigated. And Mueller has to be investigated for wiping out those texts at an extremely relevant period of time. They say it's part of the Justice Department retention policy. Garbage. It's not part of the Justice Department retention policy to destroy evidence. I mean, you can't supersede the law and say, I'm going to have a...
The people that said Hillary should win 100 million to 0 that said the Trump voters he could smell because they're smelly Walmart people, that had an insurance policy and a media leak strategy.
Well, you know, here's the mentality. I know these people. I knew them when I was mayor. I knew them before I was mayor. After all, I grew up in a liberal city. These people are on a moral high ground. They can justify any means for their end, which is to save the country from Donald Trump and put us in the hands of Hillary Clinton or somebody else.
Here's a question. Do you see a day where Hillary's held accountable? Those that signed those phony FISA warrants are in trouble. Comey is in trouble. McCabe is in trouble. Legally. Lisa Page and Strzok, are they ever going to get in trouble?
Everything you're describing is more serious than any crime they've looked at, the peripheral crimes they've looked at. A false statement by General Flynn in which they're asking for no time in jail. How could he have been a traitor or committed treason?
That was awful.
And then they don't ask for time in jail? The prosecutor's not asking for time in jail?
When does this end?
It ends when he files his report and we can answer it, whatever garbage he has.
Will there be a Giuliani report?
Damn right there'll be a Giuliani report. And I think it'll be the definitive, our report will be the definitive report, because it'll be the truth. The president did nothing wrong.
Mr. Mayor, Happy New Year. Good to see you. I want that ring. Next Christmas.